And welcome back to Subculture After Dark. Well, we've got something very special for you right now. Carnifex have got a massive new album coming out called Necromanteum, and we thought we would actually get one of the members of the band on the phone today to chat a little bit about this amazing new album. So welcome to the program, Scott.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
No problem. Now, Scott, this is an amazing album. I've had a chance to sit down and take a listen to it, and I loved it. So congratulations.
Thank you for that. I appreciate hearing that. You know, it's I'm just now starting to get some feedback. You're one of the first people I've spoken to that's heard the record, so that's amazing to hear.
Well, mate, this album is so different. We're so used to you singing about such personal things, but this album goes off onto a little bit of a concept and looks at the supernatural. I was wondering if you could tell our listeners a little bit about that decision and what sparked the interest in the supernatural for this album.
Yeah, that's a great observation. Well, you know, it's kind of twofold. One of them is kind of serious, and then one of them's kind of fun. I guess the kind of serious one is that, you know, when you do enough records and you try to do that sort of deep dive on personal emotion and try to take an audit of everything you got going on inside you and put it down on paper, it kind of takes a toll, you know, and I think I really tried to do that on Graveside, our previous record, which we wrote during a pandemic, so it was a very inward-looking time. You know, we weren't going out, we weren't playing shows, we were just here in the studio. And so that had a lot of mixed emotions there. It was a great record and I loved it, but at the same time, always having to mind my personal emotions for songs kind of takes its toll. So that was the more serious reason, kind of one of the serious reasons why I tried to switch it up a little bit on this one. And then the second one is I started getting way into all these ghost shows. I don't know if you guys watch Ghost Adventures at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I started watching like all these ghost shows, kind of also during the pandemic when I was home a bunch. And I just kind of found them fascinating that you could have, you know, a group of people go all over the world and have these very unique experiences. And in a way, it kind of felt like music in that you can travel across the world and you can have a very similar experience as someone that you didn't meet until just then when you're playing a show. And I kind of found it fascinating that so many people all over the world have had these intense supernatural experiences that are actually all really similar. And so that kind of led me down the path of wanting to write a record that explores all those experiences.
And once you've had one of those experiences, everything changes, because I'll admit I was a naysayer when it came to ghosts and things like that. And then I had an experience about 20 years ago that changed everything. I had an experience that I can only think was a ghost, and there was somebody else there with me, so it wasn't only me that saw it. It's a life-changing event, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and I was right there with you as sort of, you know, don't believe it till I see it. And yeah, I'm right there with you. It does change your entire perception.
We talked a little bit before about this album being less personal, but then there's Death's Forgotten Children as well, which talks about a near-death drowning that you had. Tell us a little bit about that and what that was like to put into words.
You know, I actually thought that particular instance blended well with the theme of the record, which the whole idea is kind of you know, what's on the other side, right? That's sort of the big question. I think that throughout history, different cultures, different religions, a lot of it all centers around, you know, what's on the other side? Is there anything after life? And you know, for me personally, I did have a near-death experience when I was a child. We had a pool in our backyard, and it was the afternoon, and my dad was doing yard work, and he was cutting some bushes down, kind of off in a corner of the yard, and I decided that it was a good idea to go jump in the deep end. And so I jump in, and you know, I think I'm 3 or 4 years old, somewhere in there. I of course can't swim. starts sinking straight to the bottom. And it was such a strange feeling because even though I was this very young person that really didn't understand, much about anything at that age, I did realize, like, oh, wow, I think I'm going to die down here, because there was no way I was going to get back to the surface. I remember going all the way to the bottom. I felt my feet touch the bottom of the pool. And it was a very strange experience. I was only in the water for a moment, but it felt like hours. And thankfully, my dad realized that, where am I? I'm at the bottom of the pool, jumped in, grabbed me, and, I was okay, right? Thankfully, crisis averted. And it was just an experience that always stuck with me. In fact, ironically, I think it's my earliest memory. I can't think of any memories younger than that. And so I thought it was kind of ironic here all these years later, if you look at some of the themes I've explored over the records, that my first memory is almost dying. I thought that was worthy of a song. And then when I started working on the song with Tom Barber, who is a guest on the song, he actually had a near-death experience as a child as well. And so it's the first song I ever co-wrote with anybody, and him and I wrote the lyrics together, and we just kind of put both of our emotions about that moment into one song, and that song became Death's Forgotten Children.
It hits me as a track that a lot of people are going to be able to relate to. Do you think there'll be a lot of people out there that'll listen to the track and think, I've been through that, and reach out to you? Because I've kind of got a feeling that's going to happen with that track.
I hope so. I hope so, because that's really my goal as a writer. That's the whole point of putting yourself out there, is so someone else can raise their hand and say, hey, me too. I went through that too. I get it. And if I think back to when, before I was a musician, when I'm just a fan, just listening to music, the thing that really always drew me into these bands and made me really love them for more than just a great song was, wow, like, whoever wrote this song gets it. They feel like I do. They went through what I went through. They're putting into words emotions that I have that maybe I don't know how to formulate. And so my hope is, yes, I hope it does reach people, and I hope they do feel compelled to share their experience.
There's a real atmosphere on this album that I haven't heard on one of your albums before. Was that something that you were trying to achieve with this album, especially with working with people like Spencer on the album as well?
It was, for us, I mean, this is our 9th full-length record and our 12th release overall. We had a couple EPs through the years. And I think we have 115 songs out. And so when you get to this point, you have to find this middle ground of, obviously we still need to be us, right? None of the fans want us to put out a record that doesn't sound like Carnifex. So we need to still be us, but then as musicians, as artists, and also just, in the name of new, we have to bring in new elements, new layers, find new ways to make us still be fresh and still not seem like, well, this is literally the record they just put out. I could just be listening to that record and I wouldn't know the difference, So, yeah, bringing in Spencer was a big part of that. For a long time, Sean, our drummer, who is one of the main writers that writes all the guitar riffs, he had been doing all the orchestration. And it kind of was like putting too much on him. He had so much on his plate, especially because he engineered and produced Graveside. While we were all in lockdown, we couldn't go out to a producer, so Sean did it. So it was kind of my goal as one of the producers on the record to take some of the burden off of him. He's doing all this he does all our pre-production too. So he's doing all the pre-production. He's writing riffs, writing drums, and writing orchestration. I was just like, let's give you a little bit of a break. And also, let's get someone who knows orchestration inside and out, which is Spencer. That's all he does. He's a classically trained musician in that respect. And so it was kind of perfect because it gave Sean a break, give him a chance to focus on drums and writing more riffs. And then we brought in someone who actually was like a complete expert in orchestration and did stuff that maybe we wouldn't think of, or maybe was beyond our skill set.
Talking of that freshness, you've also got Neil now as a full-time member of the band, and he really shines through on this album with some amazing solos. What was that like, having Neil work full-time on this album this time around, and what was your reaction when you heard those solos?
It was awesome, and I loved them, you know. It was great. It was fantastic. You know, it's kind of funny. So Neil had actually come on tour with us in January of 2020, Jan-Feb 2020. We did a European tour with Die Artist Murder, and that was our first tour with Neil playing guitar for us. And at the time, we had asked him, hey, you know, you want to come play for us? But he was still committed in another band, and so it was kind of going to be a part-time thing, like I'll tour with you guys, but I don't know what else I can do. And then the pandemic happened, and you know, no one did any touring, and so it kind of delayed the inevitable. I think had the pandemic not happened, Neil actually would have ended up joining the band back in 2020, but you know, whatever happened, and then we ended up, the four of us ended up in the studio writing, the record during lockdown, and so we kind of didn't get a chance to work with Neil on that record, which was a bummer. And then to get past it, get back out on the road, he ultimately moved on from his other band, and we both wanted to have him in the band. He wanted to be with us, and we wanted to have him. It was awesome. It just worked out. It was one of those things where all the pieces were in the right place, and it worked out. And then writing together was awesome. Anytime you bring in a new writer that's great, it just makes things so much easier. You know, it takes pressure off of all of us because we have all these new riffs, all these fresh ideas. He hasn't been in the band before, so everything he's presenting to us is new, and you know, new is fun, new is exciting. And then obviously his solos are amazing, which I love guitar solos. So it was just, as a fan of good guitar work, it was just awesome to have him in the studio with us.
Definitely. Now, my first thought when I was listening to this album was how amazing these tracks are going to sound live. What are your plans for tours going forward now, and is there any chance we might see you in Australia as well?
Yeah, we're doing the Necromanteum US tour in October, November with Signs of the Swarm, To the Grave, which is an Australian band, and Last 10 Seconds of Life. And then we're putting together a European tour for the spring of 24, and we've been talking to our Australian agent about coming down and doing some shows again. We were there, I guess it was 2 years ago now, or a year and a half ago, supporting Thy Art, and I think we're going to try to come back and do a headline tour sometime in 24. I'm not exactly sure when, maybe more towards the end of the year, because we do have a few other tours happening, but we're definitely trying to get down there as soon as we can.
Awesome. Well, mate, like I said, I absolutely love this album, and I know all of your Aussie fans are going to love it as well. So I guess to finish off the interview, what would you like to say to everybody out there before they go out and grab a copy of this album?
Well, the first thing would just be thank you. You know, thank you for supporting us for 18 years now. Thank you for letting us write a ninth full-length record. You know, we really wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the love and support from the fans. And so I really hope that this is a record that everybody loves. I really hope it's one of the albums that goes down as a fan favorite. That's what gives us all our motivation to keep writing records and to stay out on the road. And we can't wait to get out and play for everybody. And I just hope they love the record and have some fun with it.